So he wants that crazy thing online. So our next presentation is Cavitation. Neil's been here for a few times. This rock I covered 20 years ago. Neil wasn't there then. Neil's been here several times. Some of you might remember that Neil presented. He had a project in the Permian Basin that we thought was going to go really big. Unfortunately, his partner there, we have a disagreement about who's supposed to do what, but it didn't work as we hoped. But we still believe that Neil has a lot of, right, Steve? So Neil has a lot of things going on. They have a new technology they develop as well. But I still believe that there's applications for this in the Permian Basin. And now with the new product, the approved product, they're introducing a wide swatch of applications. Dwayne is a consultant who is very well entrenched in the water business, and I think can speak to some of this and will be around after as well. But I think, given where the stock's at, Neil's done a very good job of managing the business with very little capital and not doing a lot of dilutive financings that he could have done. So I asked him to come speak now because I think there are some things on the horizon. I don't know how much he can talk about those, but I think there are some things in the middle of, and if some of those can come to fruition, I think it could be transformative for the company. So, Neil.
I just want to move forward.
You go back.
Okay, good. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us today. Afternoon, sometimes work, business, but I'm glad you're here. Dave, by the way, thank you for inviting us again. We've been absent for a few years because there was nothing new to tell about, and Steve was going to be getting a lot of headache about it. Well, now I can talk about something interesting, Steve. So anyway, Cavitation Technologies. We're going to cover aspects of our business, really take two approaches. I'm going to discuss the fact that our business development, overall technology, we're moving forward, opportunities that we have. And Wayne, who joined the company about a year ago and recently joined our advisory board, is going to really discuss the fact on the water remediation business, the industry trends, where opportunities lie with our company. That's how we're going to break it down. So I figured I'll bring an expert who's been doing it for 30 years related to water, and I'll talk about general corporate overview. So here is the short disclosure statement. And we're going to move forward. Come on, yeah, here we go. We're going to talk about the technology itself. So what do we do? Cavitation Technologies. It's really to conceptualize it. It's a flow-through process, and we make changes in fluids at the physical and molecular structure. Why does it even matter? Well, in our reactors, the flow through ranges anywhere from 10 gallons to 500 gallons a minute. Sometimes the pressure that entering the chamber would be anywhere from 150 psi to as high as 1000 psi. Inside the chamber, because we do break the molecular structure of the fluid, and we break the fluids to nanoparticles or microparticles, the chemical reaction is really taking place significantly faster than any other technology that exists today in the world. It's a flow-through process. Our systems range anywhere from 10 gallons per minute to as high as 500 gallons per minute. As I mentioned today, we're going to talk about water primarily, although our technology has been applicable to many other applications as well. So I will talk about our corporate opportunities at the end of our presentation, and while I'm going to pass the microphone to Dwayne, that's all yours.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I just wanted to give a little background. As Neil mentioned, I've been in the water treatment business for about 30 years of my career. I've been in the oil and gas industry for about 50. So I go back to the late 70s when the oil boom was going on, and then we all know what happened in '86. It crashed, and then I was doing engineering jobs and defaulted into water and found my niche. So water treatment has been my world. As you mentioned, in the Permian Basin, there's a University of Texas regional campus there called UTPB, and they're right in the hub. So I decided, well, I actually got approached to chair this Texas Water and Energy Institute. So they have regional students and access to the University of Texas system to look at new technologies. So at about that time, I had worked for many of the large water treatment companies in the world, US Filter, Veolia, and then I formed my own business right during COVID. And so what I wanted to envision doing is to look for new technologies. And sure enough, met Neil about a year ago. I'm a part of a lot of other solar powered membranes, a lot of different, if y'all want to talk about other technologies that are coming out in the market now, it's exploding. So where do we take this? So in the Permian Basin, and when I say Permian Basin, there's really the Delaware Basin, there's the Midland Basin, and the Permian. A lot of people call it the Permian Basin, but there's different sectors of it throughout West Texas, and then in southeast New Mexico, there's a couple of counties that produce the most oil per capita in the whole country. And it's very, very small, but there's oil rigs like every 5 feet, I mean, there's a lot of oil there. And so how much oil they produce in this whole region, about 6 million barrels a day. And the next column below it is at 20 million barrels a day of produced water. That water has got to go somewhere. So I started following the Permian Basin probably really nitty gritty in about 2015. And at that time, the water rate was probably about, I want to say 6 or 7 million. So from 2015 to 2025, it's going to 20 million barrels a day. And companies like Pioneer Natural Resources were all in the Permian Basin. Their goal, which is now to 2025, they knew that they were going to produce 1 million barrels a day to produce oil. Just one company. And they hit that number and blew it away. So Exxon bought Pioneer. Now it's their problem. But there's a lot of water. So I'll stick in this slide just a little bit more. The main way that oil companies have been getting rid of water is to stick it right back into the ground. So saltwater disposal wells. And it's the cheapest. But what happens when you stick water back in the ground? You get earthquakes. So you can see, and even I'll back up a little bit, in Oklahoma in like 2012, 2013, started getting the earthquakes. And there's the 98th meridian that runs through Oklahoma, and on the right-hand side, they have certain rules, and on the left-hand side, they have certain rules, right? And so they started getting earthquakes. My brother had just moved up there, and he sends me a picture of a hard hat and some neat stuff, and he goes, man, we got earthquakes in Oklahoma. I said, what? And so a lot of people thought the earthquakes were being created by fracking. No, they may cause it. And I'll be real clear, there's no hardcore evidence that water injection is creating it, but it's very, very, very likely. So in 2013 in Oklahoma, there was probably 10 earthquakes. By 2015, there was over 1,000. And so the governor of Oklahoma decided to curtail it back. They had to cut back production, which was a big deal, right? That's a lot of the revenue comes from the oil. So they had a balance. But now fast forward to the Permian, and we started fracking more wells and going to longer laterals. So traditionally you drill a well, it goes vertical, right? So when the shale revolution happened, now we're going down a well, turning 90 degrees and going into the shale. And they're fracking a shale as hard as your desk, right? I was a wireline engineer, one of my first jobs out of college, and we log a well, and you can see the seismic, you see the sandstone, yep, there's oil there, limestone, shale, not that much, but it came off the bore. There was some resistivity to it, there was some water in that shale, or some fluid. And sure enough, nowadays we're fracking wells in the shale. That's the shale rock at the bottom of the ground. So now we're fracking more, going deeper. They're actually drilling not 1 mile, not 2 miles, about 3 or 4 miles horizontally after they're going vertically in a well. And that takes a lot of water. So here we go, back to the earthquakes. 2017, you see there, total 242. And then 2020, during COVID, it just went up. So the Railroad Commission in the state of Texas governs the bodies, these waters. So they created a zone where they could not put any more water in the SWD well. They said, cut it out. Because some of these earthquakes were happening, and you can see the different magnitude levels, right? Some of these earthquakes went over 5. There was a 5.2 last Christmas, and I talked to some of my engineer buddies in Midlands, and the Christmas trees were shaking, but no buildings were damaged, people died, but they were approaching that level. And so the Railroad Commission says, okay, now we're gonna have to start curtailing it back. So if you can't dispose of it, what are you gonna do with the water? So right about like when Neil was working with his buddy in New Mexico and they were testing, right? That was about the time when everybody goes, okay, if I can't stick it back in the ground, what am I gonna do with it? And so there's been a ton of technologies that have been coming into the market, and I've been following a lot of them, right? Because you can't dispose of it anymore. They won't let you. Or you're gonna have to truck it 10 miles from where you were disposing of it because there's another disposal well that's not too much in that seismic activity area. But they don't want to truck it. They need technology, they need it. So, yeah, so Neil and I met about a year ago, and they'd already done some of the testing. And we did one test with another water midstream company. They formed water midstream companies where the oil company said, you just handle the water. And they said, okay. And so about 2018, 2019, a few companies started developing. Now there's 30 water midstream companies. That's all they do. They either move it, they treat it, they recycle it, they reuse it. And now we're getting to where they want to beneficially reuse that water. And what does beneficial reuse mean? Now we can grow crops with it. Now we can water a golf course. We can do dust brush. We can grow alfalfa, hemp. They're doing some tests in New Mexico right now. They're growing marijuana, with treated, produced water. So the process flow diagram of what technologies are needed has been disrupted. And there's a shift in the market, and they're going, okay, where can we use this technology? Where can we use this technology? And there's several conferences that are just strictly water conferences. And everybody's saying, okay, what about cavitation? What about electrolysis? What about something else besides what they've been traditionally using? So that's where this comes in. So traditionally, I would say from about 2015 to now, they would take the water, they would use a ton of chemicals, and they'd use a dissolved air flotation unit, which is another flotation device where you could separate the oil and the water and some contaminants. And so you would have to, there's a coagulation chamber and a flocculation chamber, pump all over the chemicals and get the water down to, that quality right there. And that kind of exploded, and everybody just says, all right, everybody's using peracetic acid or chlorine dioxide in a DAF, and maybe a media filter at the end, and off they go. They can discharge it into the SWDs or put it in an evaporation pond and let the operators then take it out of the evaporation pond and frack with it. So it's all about frack demand, it's all about where is that water going. So 2021 to now, 2025, there's 20 million barrels a day. That number is probably supposed to go to 27 million barrels a day, every day, that they got to treat. And so the fact that we don't need a lot of chemicals, I'm not saying we don't need zero, but it's really lowered the level, and the speed and the size of the reactor. We won't go into all the technical details about it, but this has got legs. And so I've been following a lot of different things as an independent now. So I'm not trying to sell my Veolia equipment, my US filter equipment. I'm an independent. So Neil found me and I said, let's do this. So what's the technology? We've got cavitation and we've got non-thermal plasma. Same thing. We're not going to go into the details. If you want to get technical with me later, let's talk later. But it's a unique way to kill bacteria, to kill the bugs, to kill some of the constituents that are in the produced water that you can't do with like physical separation. How do you do it? You use some kind of chemicals. So we're trying to get away. If you're in the chemical industry, we're after you, right? So, but they don't want to use a lot of chemicals. Some of them are very toxic. There's a few green chemical companies out there that are going for it, but yeah, we're trying to get away from that. Another slide, same thing, highly scalable, operates between 1,000 and 2,000 watts. We can fully automate these things. And the fact that it's no moving parts in there. We're creating bubbles at high pressures, high temperatures. Nothing is there moving. You saw that one slide that Neil had at first. It was just water going through the veins. What can we replace? So if we're looking at just organic material that we're having to break down, UV lights have been around for decades. We could possibly eliminate the UV lights and go to plasma. We've done a couple of experiments, and Neil might be able to, I want to talk to him. I wasn't around too much for all the details of that, but we've done some testing in California and, done bacteria testing with plasma. It's working really well. So the early results are fantastic. Same thing, here's a couple of more examples of some contaminants that were in the water, did some testing. So we're getting calls from not only oil and gas side, but our agricultural, pharmaceutical. We had a client he had what was the company in agriculture, he got a virus on his roots of his plants?
North American farms.
Yeah, North American farms. And they lost like 90% of their crop because they had a virus on the roots. So we're looking at other industries besides oil and gas, but that's my world. But now that I'm into this, I'm kind of expanding it as well. Anything to do with water is what I do. Yeah, here's all the other different markets, pharmaceuticals, desal. So that's one benefit too. A lot of the water that's in the Permian is very high salinity, 100,000, 150,000. I've seen some of them that are saturated brine, which is about 300,000 TDS. So some of that early testing we did with Greg in New Mexico, we took 60,000 TDS water down to 1,000. So we're getting way over 90% efficiency on the desal part. So all these markets, you can see the market caps and all that. And here, back to Neil, we've finished it up.
Yeah.
I'll be around if you want to talk a little more technical.
All right. Okay, and we'll talk about a little bit of business opportunities and how what moves us forward. We'll talk about cavitation. Dwayne described the fact that we have green technology. What differentiates us from the rest of the world, we don't need to use chemicals, or this reduction of chemicals, which is a variable cost for the end user, can be reduced anywhere from 80 to 100%. So, for example, when one of the water operators, big company in the Permian, they used just some hydrogen peroxide to treat their frac water, but in $10 million in cost. That's their variable cost, just on one chemical. We do not use chemicals at all. So that's something like this introduced, not only because we're green technology, but we're very cost efficient, and we're also very much predictable. So over the last several years, what we did, we also developed something we're going to briefly touch on, non-thermal plasma. And what does it really do? So conceptually think about it, it's a lightning going through water. So UV lights, the way they treat the fluid is outside, so the water never touches. It's just the light. With us, about 1,000 watts or 2,000 watts, it is the lightning going through. How can we even produce it? Because it's called plasma, because of cavitation. So what happens now is, in order to create plasma, we need to have gas. It could be oxygen, it could be nitrogen, any of those. We don't need to use any of those, because cavitation produces a lot of oxygen and breaks the molecular fluid. It breaks a molecular structure in the fluid. Now the lightning that is going through, what happens now is absolutely annihilates the organics. Opportunities for that particular technology are exponentially bigger than even what we do in water treatment department. Obviously, the industry itself is very large, but it's all industrial, a lot of money into infrastructure. But plasma is basically applicable to anything across the board. We've demonstrated a couple of glasses. You could see them on the prior slide. Maybe I'll just go back a little bit. Let's see, is it gonna work? Okay, never mind. Yeah. Well, we just need to move fast forward. One more, here we go. So what we're demonstrating here is the following. You see two glasses of water. We're in California. Supposedly tap water is drinking water. It should be less than 700 TDS. We use plasma to treat that water. And that's on the right side. You see the brown stuff? That's what we're able to separate for our drinking water. Next day, the settlement, as you can see how it is in the bottom. So when we have a discussion of the fact how the drinking water, what it really does, in essence, it's not as good as sometimes we claim. And our objective is to achieve something like this for multiple applications, for example, pharmaceuticals, electronics. The next step, of course, we'll move forward to is PFAS, which is for every chemical. If something we can deal with there, highly successful, because the initial indication tells us that we could do clear separation of some of the non-organics, which will be settled. If we can be successful in the PFAS, then the opportunity is big as it can possibly come. So in the last year, we really had a year of restructuring. Now we're in the fourth quarter of our fiscal year 2025, our year end June 30th, 25. I'll kind of cover on the calendar basis. 24 was a very challenging year for us because, we worked with a strategic partner, just met Balestra. That was our core technology for cavitation, vegetable oil refining. Predictable industry, but total revenues and margins started to shrink. So we looked at the opportunity and said, all right, instead of diluting shareholders, taking some toxic convertibles, can we sell our business that's becoming non-core? We sold this to this Balestra. The name may not ring the bell, but they're one of the largest engineering firms in vegetable oil refining in the world. We sold the business to them, just the licensing. And certain technologies for about $1.1 million, which gave us about 2.5, 3 times annual cash flow. So it gave us plenty of capital. We don't need to dilute shareholders. They're really focused primarily on our water remediation business. So fast forward, opportunities are really knocking on the door, and I do believe that within the next 90 days, I'm going to be delivering quite a few deals that we're currently structuring with, and we talk about some global companies that we're currently working with. So I look forward to the opportunity again to present next time, and hopefully be on the lookout on our press releases that I think we're going to cover it, in the very near future. Pretty much it. Any questions?
I have a question for Dwayne.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, we run into this a lot, I think, with small companies. And sometimes I think the problem is that they may have solutions, but I think there's sometimes some reluctance, for a lot of reasons, on the part of big companies to try to even consider some of the things that those companies might be doing. And that's why I was excited, honestly, when you came in, because I felt like you had some entree into some of those companies. I mean, is that just me being sour grapes about small companies, or is that a real problem? And is that something you think you can overcome?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the big thing in the oil field is piloting, right? Is to take your unit, and we've taken to the field and prove to them, not only does it work one spot on one TDS, you move it around, you get 3 or 4 good data points. And once you get, after the piloting, you get a commercial unit in place, then it's usually pretty small, and then you show it can scale up. Because we're working with one operator in New Mexico now, they're treating 300,000 barrels a day at one facility. So to run, the module we have, it runs 17,000 barrels a day, just from one unit, right? So you can imagine how many you need. And they always say, can you scale it up, right? But it's a real regimented process to pilot it first, pilot it at different places, different operators, even a different region. Like we may go to the Bakken, or we may go to the Marcellus. But Permian is where it's at. I mean, Permian has the most water. So between the Delaware and the Midland, or one of the other basins, that's what we would want to do. And we're looking at customers in each different one of those basins. And like Neil was saying, at COVID and right at the end of COVID, the price of oil tanked. And then it took it a while to come back up, and everything's driven by that price of oil, right? So if it's above 65 right now, it's at $62 a barrel. Everybody's kind of getting a little scared. But as long as it stays 65, 70, 75, 80, I don't think we want it back above 100 again. Then the price of the pump goes to $4 a gallon, and then everybody goes, oh, shit, So, but yeah, it's a real, and there's so many companies this size that one of them's just going to go poof. And the major companies, they all will pilot too, but they're not so eager to do it, in a way like the small companies will. Their company's based on it, and they need to get this off the ground. So I've got a lot of connections with guys in the field because I was a service engineer before and understand what it takes to run a pilot. So it's structured. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm just trying to give you, it's fair to say that you probably can open doors that Neil,
Yeah.
God bless
Oh,
him,
yeah.
can't. Right? Is that fair to say?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think I wear my boots right. No, I've been romping around Texas for many years, yeah. So, yes, sir, thank you.
For an operator, how much does it cost to process a barrel?
Okay, so an SWD where we just inject it, it's in between 50 cents, 75 cents, and $1 a barrel to inject it, depending on how deep you go. And then that's a good question because if we can get any technology to about $1.25 a barrel, they'll consider it. But a lot of the technologies that have been around these last 5 to 10 years, like even to evaporate water, that costs $5 to $6 per barrel to thermally evaporate it. Like Veolia has an evaporator that can run it. That's 4 or 5x of what it takes to stick back in the ground. It's shit, we're just gonna go back to the SWD. Then once the earthquake started happening, and they're all like, oh, can we find some technology? And a lot of these pilots that not only he's running, but others are running, are about that $1.50 to $2 a barrel. And the oil companies at the last water conference in Midland, Exxon said they will have a full-scale desal beneficial reuse facility by the end of 2026. And that was Exxon. They were publicly saying it at a conference. So it's really, really close. So if we can get that price down that's close to an SWD, they'll start doing it. Any other questions? Okay, thank you all.
Great.
Yeah.
Thanks, folks.